Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Career Talks Tuesdays. Today, I have an interesting guest, Rob, who is a founder and not career coach, certified coach for at his company called Growth Habits. He coaches entrepreneurs and coaches. As well, he has a very, very interesting career path. He started as a DJ in high school and traveled pretty much coast to coast, different countries DJing. Then he went back to work. Then he went and started another business. Then he went back to work and then he went into HR, worked in HR, as certified coach helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses and tap into their potential, I guess, unleash their potential, true potential to really find success in their business. So let's speak to Rob. Let us hear his career journey. It's very interesting. We were just talking before we went live. So I'm going to pass it over to Rob. So Rob, tell us your interesting career story.
So my interesting career story is out of high school, I didn't go to university. So when I started my first real business, I started a record label, and that is due to my love of music. You were talking about DJing, so that was definitely the business aspect of my love for music and DJing. And I moved to Toronto to pursue those dreams. And if we if we follow my path from there, it's a journey of doing music for a bit, going to a job for a while until I no longer can stand it or I've saved enough money, starting a different business, and rinse and repeat. I've done that a couple times, and I left my last job in December, and I've said I'm never going back. I've more than fully replaced that salary. So I'm quite confident that I'm able to take all the learnings from my past experiences, which includes I've done HR, people and culture. That was a big part of, I think, which led me to where I am now.
You started back in HR, I think 2004.
That's correct.
2003, 2004, right?
Yes.
And you stayed in it for decades, or a decade long, like pretty long. You stayed in it. What made you stay? You know, you went for a DJ. You DJ. You love music. What made you pick HR as a career path?
I didn't initially. It chose me. I got my first HR job in pretty much a new HR call center. And I got that job because of my bilingualism, because of my experience in a call center and my customer service experience. And then once I got there, I had this aha that I was like, oh, when HR is done well, it is the intersection of the business needs and the people needs. It is really dumb to think that, it doesn't matter how the business is doing, because if the business isn't doing well, there are no jobs. But just as much, it's also really short-sighted to think you can treat the employees any which way and it doesn't affect the business. So I realized that, okay, when this is done well, this is an intersection of things that I love. I love people. I'm passionate about helping people. I've always been curious. I've always been the go-to friend, the support person, the trusted confidant. But I started my first business as a teenager, and I love and fascinated by business. So once I got there and realized its potential, then that's why I kind of stuck with it. And I did it for a few years, left, and I was pursuing music again. And then I was helping my partner at the time run her business, and did that for 3 years, music and helping that business. And then when I came back to HR, I did a couple years in recruiting before I went into people and culture roles. The last half decade was in people and culture roles, progressive organizations, which really understood the importance of how people are, if they're feeling empowered, do they know where they're going, do they feel supported and trusted, is it a place where they can show up and be their full selves, versus a policy driven older style HR approach.
So I'm going to switch something on you. I know I sent you the questions earlier, but since we're both in HR, what, in your opinion, you've worked in it for a long time. If you had to describe, in your opinion, your professional opinion, someone who's worked in it, what makes someone a good HR professional?
So I'm going to start.
We all hear a lot of stuff, right? Like, I get approached all the time. Should I go get this designation? Should I get this certification and this and this and that, right? That's fancy stuff. but then I always say something else. But I'm so curious to know from you, from a fellow ex HR professional, what you think in working in various different HR roles, and you've held
Mhm.
pretty senior roles as well in HR. What is your opinion, personal and professional? What makes someone good HR professional?
All right, so I'm going to start by saying that I don't generally like the term HR, and I consider it a bit of a bad word. And I think the bad rap that HR and the word has in some circles is deserved. Because if you just look at the words, human resources, like as if humans are resources to be sucked and siphoned dry. So I don't really care for the term. Thankfully, HR is very much evolving, which is beautiful, and I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful. Um, I think a really great HR professional, a people and culture person, a people leader, whatever fancy new 2020 title you want to give it, is someone who truly understands that it is the intersection of the business needs and the people needs. And in the past, HR got a bad rap because there was a bit of facade that it was there for the employees, but really people were just towing the company line. And unfortunately, a lot of people, especially when I started out, a lot of my peers and mentors really didn't get to play the strategic roles that they could have and they should have played. And it really, decisions were made by senior leadership, was thrown over the fence, and the HR leaders were stuck trying to figure it out. So realizing that HR, when done well, it really is the intersection of what the people need and what the business needs, and really translating those business needs into how that's going to play out to the employees. How are you going to find the best people? How are you going to make sure people feel empowered and cared for and listened to and supported, and where they can learn and they grow? And knowing that when you do those things well and you prioritize those things, the business does well, and then those things feed each other.
So, what steps, actually, before I go with steps, do you think? I have a question for you. If you feel comfortable answering, feel free
Mm-hmm.
to answer because I get this question asked a lot. So, I'm just curious to know your opinion on this. Do you think an HR professional needs a designation to truly showcase that they're good HR professional?
It depends on the organization. Mike, I don't think so. I've got a couple. I did a couple HR courses earlier in my career because my employer was willing to pay for it. But the further I went, and especially as I started getting more responsibility and taking bigger roles, realized that it wasn't really needed. If it's a role where you're really going to be playing in labor law and be in charge of payroll and do there, yes, definitely there's some things. And when it comes to, handling really delicate things like harassment, absolutely there's not really much gray there. It is very much black and white.
Yeah.
So I think the schooling, the learning, whatever is beneficial. But when it comes to holistically the role to be a strong strategic people leader, to be able to understand the business needs, to make people feel supported, to what people used to always call soft skills, which I think are probably the most important skills now, especially in a world where things are being automated and things are changing. I don't think the designation is nearly as important as it used to be.
But you do believe in professional developing yourself.
Fully.
Yeah.
Well, if I go back to how I started my story earlier, that I did not go to university. I didn't, professionally pursue some degree that way, but I've continually pursued learning and growing and self-development. It's just kind of one of the beautiful things here. You want to learn anything, there's videos, there's courses, there's endless amounts of things online. You can learn anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's critical.
So, steps in growing your career. You've had multiple different career paths.
Mhm.
So we can either do this in three or four different series of okay, if
Mhm.
you want to be a successful DJ, here's the steps to take. If you want to be successful HR, here's the steps to take,
Uh-huh.
and then eventually we'll go into entrepreneur because that's a topic that I'm also really interested in knowing. But let's stick to steps. What steps, if you look back at like as a DJ and then as an HR professional, what steps did you take to grow your career?
I think I have a couple answers that would apply to most scenarios, actually. So, first off, is back to the point we're just making about being dedicated to your own learning and growth, is look for mentors. And whether it's you want to become a DJ and learn how to produce music, or you want to become an HR professional, or you want to be an entrepreneur, approach every decision you're making or opportunity based on what can I learn here, how can I grow, or once you're in a situation, who can I learn from, how can I grow. And me seeking out mentors has been one of the most powerful things I've done. And sometimes it's been me intentionally taking someone out for lunch and asking them questions and getting to know them, where it became a bit more formal. Other times it's a more senior person asked for something to be done by me or by my team, and I made sure that I over delivered on it to create the relationship so that I had the avenue to start, asking for support, insight, or help. So wearing your learning hat and looking how you can learn and grow in each scenario and finding mentors, I think that would be one of the biggest things I would say. The other thing I would say is take risks. Take risks in your career, take risks as an entrepreneur. Just especially, I think the older you get and the more responsibilities you have, if you have children, if you have a mortgage, the opportunities and the possibilities to take risks become smaller and scarier and more difficult. So definitely early in your career to take risks as far as just to try different things, or to push yourself out in a situation where you might actually fail, you might screw something up. That would be those two pieces of advice is what I would give, and I think they apply to all.
Yeah, definitely applies to all. Now, I want to circle back to what you said about finding a mentor. A lot of people struggle in finding a mentor. What steps or what advice you have to give to anybody that's listening right now or in the future? What steps can one take to actually get a mentor? Because it's like kind of like a gray
So I
area.
think
Everybody tells you go get a mentor, but then no one really tells you what's like the right step or
how to
like the
do.
right approach to getting a mentor.
So it depends on the scenario. I think the biggest advice I would give here is find a way to provide value. So whether if it's someone who I approached cold or someone who I was in a work scenario with and they asked me for something, in those scenarios, I always look at how can I provide value to this person? The person is obviously very busy. This person has a lot of demands on their time, on their calendar, and I'm just someone else in their inbox or someone else in their face that's trying to get their attention and get something. So if it's someone you're in a work environment with and you have the ability to help out or volunteer or over deliver on something, that is a really great way to make a deposit in the relationship so that you can then ask for help or ask for advice. And the same thing if you're reaching out to someone cold that you don't know and it's not in a work scenario, make it about them. How can you help them? What can you offer assistance with? If they're doing an event, can you volunteer? Just any way that you can provide for them versus you taking. If you take that approach, it's a lot easier to find a mentor. But I guess, and the other way to choose a mentor is, when I'm thinking about mentors I've had in work environments, it's kind of like, well, whoever is there and who I think I can learn from or who kind of look up to. But if
Yeah.
it's outside of a structure of work, then it's who is doing things that you don't know how to do or you'd love to learn how to do, who's a couple steps ahead in something that you're really interested in, to identify them. But then again, how can you help them? How can you provide value? What can you do for them? What is something you could give to them so it's not just you're another person in their inbox looking to take.
That's a good advice on when finding a mentor. Try to find somebody that's either ahead of you. They're maybe a couple of steps ahead of you. Really study. We have LinkedIn nowadays, so you can really easily study someone's career path to see, where they've been,
Mm-hmm.
how they got. Not you may not know how they got there, but the roles they've held. Um, Before you go seek a mentor, do some research and do some homework, and see why you want the individual as your mentor. I think that probably will help too. Just instead of just randomly saying, "Hey, you're HR or you're in my field, be my mentor."
Uh-huh.
So moving on to challenges. You can talk about either all the challenges you face in all the different areas of your career path, up to
Mm-hmm.
you. But what would you say were some of the challenges or obstacles in your way in your career that you faced? How did you overcome these challenges or obstacles?
So some obstacles that I faced definitely earlier in my career, me saying that I pursued a different path and I didn't go get a bachelor's degree to start with, especially if I look at some of the places I worked originally, like KPMG, Ernst & Young, places that had pretty rigorous structure and rules, especially if we're going back 15, 16, 17 years ago around who they would hire in the minimum. So that was definitely an obstacle that I had to get around. And me getting in front of people and me being able to talk about, back to your question earlier, but you still value learning, and be able to show that, yes, I still value learning. Here are the different things I learned. Here's how I applied my learning. The idea that when I was 19, I was dealing with distributors on multiple continents and faxing orders, and I had manufacturing done in 2 different cities. And so just because I didn't go get a framed diploma somewhere doesn't mean I didn't put myself in difficult situations and learn things that are applicable. So I had to find ways to talk about what I had learned, that in a non-traditional way. Other challenges is, if we go to the fact that I've left a job, a secure job, on more than one occasion to be an entrepreneur. So it means I've failed. It means I've done it a few times and I've failed. And for me, it was underestimating, I think, the amount of focus, and just how all in you have to be on certain things, and that things take time. And I think if you look at anyone who succeed at the highest levels, the people we put on pedestals, the people that have books, the people that are really admired, and if you dig into their past, you realize these people they failed. You only found out about them when they became an overnight success or when they became really popular. But you look behind the scenes, and whether it's a pop artist or a business person, these people have a story of attempts and failures.
So technically, they were not overnight success, which is
Not at all.
we we term that, like, we use that term saying, oh, overnight success. But you're right, when you start digging into their past, you realize that no, they're not an overnight success. They struggled. They failed multiple times. And the path was so rough, many obstacles and challenges, failed multiple times. And then, eventually they didn't give up on the dream, but they just kept learning, pushing, trying different ways. And eventually, you came to know about them because now they're successful. So, there's no such thing as overnight success.
There's not.
Talking about failures, my next question to you, which I had on the list, but since you already brought up failures, what were some of your failures? Since your biggest career path is, I guess you will agree, is entrepreneurship, right? It's something you've always wanted. Before we went live, you shared a story, a Halloween candy story, that your mom told you were going to be an entrepreneur because you used to save your candies. And then when all the kids ran out of their candies, you went to your school to sell the candies.
Not just to sell them. I had a little briefcase for them. So I'm old enough that cassette tapes were a thing when I was growing up. And I had this little plastic faux leather little suitcase thing that had slots for cassettes in it. I tore the plastic holders for cassettes and then just made it as a little suitcase.
Oh, wow.
And I waited a month or 2 months until everyone had gone through all their good candy. And then I showed up at school and I was selling and trading. I had a little business in grade school where I was peddling candy at school.
Grade school?
This is grade school.
Wow.
This is like 8. I'm 8 years old, 9 years old in this.
So how much did you sell the candy for? I'm just curious.
I don't know. It's so long ago. It's a while ago. I don't remember, but I do remember having pockets full of marbles, of baseball cards and quarters and nickel, money, but also I accepted, if there's someone had a really cool marble I wanted or other things. So
how did you even come up with this idea? I'm so curious to know. Like, at 8, what made you think, hey, I'm not eating my candy. I'm going to save it. When everyone runs out of the candy, I'm going to sell it. How did you have the patience, first of all, as a kid at 8 years old, not to eat your candy? I would eat all my candy.
I think, if I remember my thinking correctly, I looked up to people that were older, and my friends who had older brothers and sisters or older siblings. They had jobs, they had paper routes, they had ways to get money, they were babysitting, and I couldn't do that yet. So I was trying to think of, what did I have and what currency I had. And I think I remember one night I dumped my Halloween candy and I got a really great haul because the weather was nice and I did multiple streets. And I just had a moment where I realized that this was a currency. And then how can I leverage this currency? Beyond that, I can't say anything beyond these are some spotty memories. I do remember the moment looking at my pile of candy thinking, what can I do with this? But it's so long ago. Anything I would say beyond that would be me kind of making stuff up, I think.
Okay, so let's go to your DJing. So So let's talk about failures, because I'm going to stick to entrepreneurship because that's one thing that you always wanted and you made it happen. But you went back and forth on it. You did DJing, then you said you weren't making money, so you went back to getting a job. Then you got made money, and then you left the job to go pursue another idea as an entrepreneur. And then you needed money again, so you were going back and forth. And now you're in a good place where you're not turning back. You are an entrepreneur. You're in a good place. So if you can share your story of each time you had an idea and you pursued it, what failed, that it didn't, flourish, and then you have to go back and get a job. So your failure as an entrepreneur, what was each of those failures, and what did you learn from each of those failures that made you now successful as an entrepreneur?
Ooh. The first time around, I think underestimating the cost of living in Toronto, because I moved here to do it. And I was younger. I was in my early 20s. And so the party lifestyle, the late nights, everything that kind of came with it, I fully embraced it and enjoyed myself probably too much, and didn't focus enough on what the longer term play was. What was the bigger picture? How do I really make this into something sustainable? I had the record label, but I wasn't taking it as seriously, and I was inconsistent with it. It would be a big thing that I had to learn the hard way with that. Which then I went to go, get stable money again, went back to jobs. And then when I left that time and did it, what happened is my partner got pregnant. And then the realities of like, oh, it's not just us, there's children involved. So then the stakes were higher. And I just did not have the means to maintain that. Not with the idea that I had another mouth to feed. The next time was very structured. I was a lot more focused on the business. I was building international relationships. I had, licensed stuff to Australia. I was getting ready to play in England. It was a lot more of a sustained business. And then it was more of a personal crisis. My partner and I wouldn't recommend. Here's this. I wouldn't recommend running a business with someone, having 2 small children with them, while also trying to run your own business. So it was.
Don't get in business with your partner.
Don't get in business with your partner is not something that some people I see pull it off. It's not something I would recommend for everyone. And if you are going to get in business with your partner, to really just assess all the impacts on your life, especially, not getting into business with your partner when you also have 2 children under the age of 4, while you're also trying to run your own business as well at the same time. So that was that time that I left, and I was needed to back to go get a job. I was kind of starting over again. I left music. My marriage ended, moved out, and I was starting a new. So it was a real big starting at zero again moment. Yeah, and I think the biggest lesson I took from that, which has helped me so much now, is just realizing the importance of, you can't separate your personal life and who you are at work in business. You can try, and people have tried for a long time to try and put on a brave face at the office or pretend that what's going on at home doesn't affect business. Or if you're struggling at work and things are difficult at work, to think that's not going to affect you at home. So there's just really, I learned to prioritize my mental health, my physical health, and my personal relationships. Versus we see plenty of people that burn out, that sacrifice a marriage, a personal relationship, their health, their mental health, their physical health, for the sake of I'm just going to push this hustle, busy culture thing, and paying a price that way. And I think that's the lesson I took from the last time before I launched this time. So this time around, it's very much about, I've got daily practices that I take seriously. I focus on my personal health. My relationships are paramount, and just knowing that I can't show up and do an incredible job for my clients unless I'm also taking care of me and what's important to me in my relationships and my own health.
So speaking of your daily practices, what is your daily practice?
One of the most important things, I think, for when an entrepreneur is starting out is, especially if you've been in structured jobs, is you're going from lots of structure to no structure. So having some kind of routine. I have a morning habit, and if you look up entrepreneurship, morning habits are talked about a whole lot. It's almost a bit of a joke. My partner jokingly calls my morning habit my boot up sequence. So there's things that I do almost every single day, and that is a cold shower, stretches and exercises, meditation, and journaling. So you can do whatever variation you want for you, but for me, really, it's so cold shower. It slaps me awake, and it's uncomfortable, and I think it's important to do uncomfortable things regularly. Stretches and exercises. I don't think I need to get into that. But like the idea of feeling good, get the blood flowing, and really wake up the entire body.
It makes you fresh. I've been doing it past a week, 4 weeks now.
Mm.
I go for like 5K walk, power
Amazing.
walk. The weather's good. I'm trying to take advantage of that. The one thing I've realized is, like, I was doing it, but then my dad passed away, then I stopped, and the whole grieving process. But now I'm back to taking care of myself. I agree with you to have a habit. And I was in every entrepreneur book I've read, everybody says this to exercise in the morning. Robin Sharma has the 5 a.m. club. I'm reading his book, and he talks about the importance of having a routine in the morning, but exercising. Him and somebody else said that the importance of doing a 30-minute physical, at least 30 minutes. If you do more, great, but like 30 minutes right in the morning doing a physical activity does actually make your, I forgot what he said, but basically just your brain going.
Yeah, I believe it.
Do you
I
agree with that?
absolutely fully agree with it. Yeah, and then once I'm done that, I'll do a meditation, and whatever works for you. Meditation is a hip word right now. There's a lot of talk about it, but some quiet time, some prayer, some focus time, there's no distractions, devices are away, just you alone, quiet. Just to get a sense, to do an audit of what is going on here. And then the last thing I do is journaling, because generally by that point, after all those three things, I have ideas. There's stuff flowing. There's things in my mind, and I don't have a necessarily structure to my journaling, but I just get out whatever's here, get it somewhere so that it makes room in my mind. And sometimes it's therapeutic, because then my ideas are organized. Oh, I didn't even realize I was thinking that. Or once the noise and the gibberish is out of here, then I have more space in my head for creative possibilities and to making connections.
So is this habit, do you believe, is contributing to you being successful as an entrepreneur? You never had this habit the other time you were an entrepreneur?
No, I had a journaling. It's funny. Journaling is something that I've done on and off in my life. And I have a stack. I could go upstairs and bring you a stack of books. And it would be funny. I'd be able to say like, oh, this is after a breakup. This is after I was trying to figure out who I was. This is after I was laid off. I can connect them almost all to painful periods of my life, or periods of growth through difficulty. And I had an aha moment a year and a half ago where I realized, if I got so much benefit from journaling when I was low and it brought me to like a good baseline, what if I journaled when I was in a good place? Could that elevate me further? So I started journaling regularly again about a year and a half ago, but it's not something that I had previous times that I was pursuing the entrepreneurial path.
So journaling, are you just journaling anything, or whatever comes to your mind, you're just writing it down?
Anything.
Not like a particular thing. It's whatever comes to you, you're just writing it down.
The commitment is just a journal, and it's just do at least a couple pages. And then sometimes I don't know what's going to come. Sometimes I'm writing things I'm grateful for. Sometimes I'm realizing that there's things that are annoying me that I'm complaining about. Sometimes when I'm done reading it, it's almost like I'm kind of coaching myself here. Sometimes it's ideas, but the idea is just to get stuff out. It's therapeutic. It's healthy. It helps with the creative mind. There's a lot of benefits for it.
I'm gonna try that, because I do journaling just for ideas, to get my mind going. Whatever I have an idea in my head, I just write it down. But I've never done what you said, like if what's annoying you, how you feeling. I've never done that part. I don't know why. But I also have a lot of books. One of my friends actually gifted me last year, 2 years ago, I think it was for my birthday. She actually gifted me a whole set of books, and each had a different phase written on it. So there are different sizes, and then the pen set. I'm like, how did you know? I'm like,
that's great.
I don't journal. I journal my actually I shouldn't say I don't journal. I journal my ideas. That's how I get my mind flowing. So
Mhm.
you do contribute. This habit you've developed a year and a half. You didn't have this habit prior, and you do believe that this habit is making you successful right now.
Yeah, it's definitely part of my success. Absolutely. Yep.
What other we talked about daily habits, but what other steps do you believe has helped you become successful that you would like to share with other people that, hey, here's the steps to take in order to be successful, be it a career, be it entrepreneur. So what steps? One is having a daily routine and daily practice, journaling. What other things?
Being really clear on who you are, what you stand for, what your personal values are. And so the word values is used a bunch. And values, depending on where you work, it's something that's a list on the wall. Maybe there's some cynicism around it, but not corporate values. But what are your personal values? What are your personal principles? And to really get clear on what those are, and to use that as a compass to make decisions on what you should be pursuing, what area you should be working in if you're going to, become an entrepreneur and start a business, to make sure that what you're doing isn't just for some pursuit of money or some kind of trend or fad, but something that really aligns to what excites you, what's important to you, what you believe in. So I think that is a really important piece that I did it in the last year and a half, which made it really clear to me. I was like, oh, I know I want to work with people. I know I want to help people. I love the intersection of helping people being more purposeful, happy, productive, aligned, whatever, but also business. But going through clarity of what my values were made it apparent. Like I couldn't ignore it. I was like, it's here on paper. These are the things that I'm passionate about. This is what excites me. This is what moves me. So that would be something that I think is a really important step. Um, and then once you know that focus, just the word focus, 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 focus. Um, I often talk about two examples when talking about focus. I talk about Beyonce, because if you watch her Homecoming documentary on Netflix, it is bananas. That woman is insane. Her level of focus and dedication for months and months leading up to her Coachella show, it's
Yeah,
exhausting to watch because it's incredible, like magic. And to just see how dedicated and focused she is. And then the other example sometimes I talk to people is Warren Buffett and Bill Gates were both asked what they think are the secret to their success was, and they barely knew each other. It was like the second time they'd ever met, and they were both asked to write on it separately on a piece of paper that the other person saying it, and they both wrote the word focus. Where I think people fall into the trap of, oh, I want to have eggs in a bunch of different baskets. I want to play a bunch of different bets. I want to like really hedge everything just in case I don't know what's gonna. And then you end up doing a bunch of things poorly or a bunch of things a little bit versus zoning in your focus and realizing what's important to you and what are the things you should be really focusing on. Is big. And then when it comes to business, I see a lot of people making the mistake where they're starting off and they spend all this money and time on their website and their business card and their logo and their name, but they haven't got any clients. They don't know
yeah,
who they're serving. They don't know what problems exactly they're solving. And I jokingly call that playing business. You're really good at playing business because you've got a beautiful website, logo, business card, but have you got clients yet? Do you know what clients you're meant to be serving? Do you know what problem you're solving for those clients? Do you have people paying you? So focus would be another really big thing that was a tangent about focus. um, I don't know. I have other general advice, but I don't think it's necessarily like steps to entrepreneurship. Actually, this one is um, doing an audit of your identities, which just and starting by knowing that there's a bunch of identities, things you believe about yourself. I'm really good at this. I'm meant to do this. I'm terrible at this thing, and know that there's all these beliefs and identities you hold about yourself that are made up, and a lot of them are made up by other people. And it's stuff that was said to you in grade school that maybe your nona said to you, maybe your parents said, or maybe it's, oh, people from my town, this is the things we do. People from my culture, this is what we do. As a woman, this is what I can do. And there's all these beliefs, and it's crap. It's not true. It's true because you believe it to be true, and maybe it's been said to you and reinforced to you, or depending on where you've got the signals from. But being aware of that I think is a really important piece to succeed as an entrepreneur, because you know in school, especially, in public school, what are you taught? Show up, wait for the bell. When the bell rings, line up. When the foreman slash teacher says you can go to your workstation, go to your workstation. You have to ask permission to get up. When the bell rings again, do the thing. You're rewarded for memorization and repetition. This is a complete opposite of entrepreneurship. So there's all these, there's what we're taught in schools and things that are said to us, and it creates this made up identity or identities that we carry. So it's important to audit them, challenge them, and then find ways to get rid of them if you really want to succeed as an entrepreneur.
It's interesting you mentioned school. The thought that comes to me is schools kind of limit your creativity because they're boxing you, right? They're boxing you and, well, you got to follow these rules. And in some essence, corporations do that to their employees. They tend to box you, then to say, give you the freedom to be creative, be able to work your terms, your way. But no, we in corporations also have rules. You have to show up this time. Here's your schedule. Here's the dress code, or here's our company policies. No flex time. Thank God for COVID, which is turning things around. Much needed change because of COVID. But many organizations, and I guess you can speak on this too, as an ex-HR professional, do you agree with what I'm saying, that companies also a lot of times tend to box their employees instead of letting them free the best out of their employees by just letting them be free to work the way they work best instead of boxing them and confining them into what they think should be done?
Yeah, you end up with much better results, and the company succeeds and can attain heights and innovate and do things that are impossible if you give people some flex, if you give people some room, if you tell them, this is what we're aiming towards loosely. We trust you. We're going to treat you like adults. We're going to be more driven by the deliverables than by, bums in seats by 9 o'clock, and you can only wear jeans on Fridays. And, like you said, insert all of the rules. And this idea that this is my job description, this is what I'm limited by, which is why working at a startup is a really great way to get experience if your ultimate goal is to want to be an entrepreneur, especially an earlier stage startup or an organization that is more free flowing with the trust and the slack that's given to employees and the exposure to different roles and different things. Because we were joking a bit before the call about to be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing and able to wear a bunch of different hats. But if you're at a company that's very structured and very limiting in its approach with employees, you're going to be stuck, versus working at a startup or a smaller early stage startup, you can get some of that exposure. So I fully agree with you, which makes me think of something else there. As far as advice I would give or steps, it's hold your big goals loosely. So have your big goal. This is, I want to, for me, it was, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be coaching people. I want to helping people succeed. I want to help people get out of their own way. I want to help people make transfer, whatever. I had this kind of bigger goal, but I didn't get so dead set on what that had to look like. I had this on my wall for 6 months. It said, quit Blue Dot by December 10th. So I had a date. In mind. I knew I wanted to quit, and I had a loose idea of what it looked like. And at first I thought I was going to be a creativity coach. I have this background in music. I understand creative people. I love creative people. I have a bunch of things I've done in my life to increase my creativity. So I thought, this is something I know, I'm passionate about, and I can help people. But then people started showing up and asking me about my habits. And I was like, oh, you want to learn habits? Okay. So then I said, and when I really launched my business, I said, I'm a habit specialist. I help people with their habits. But then most of the people showing up were entrepreneurs. So I did another assessment. It's like, oh, most of the people showing up are entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I understand that life. I know the challenges inherent with it. And even my last half decade as an employee, I worked with entrepreneurs and supported entrepreneurs. So I know it. So then I declared that I work with entrepreneurs. And then the last evolution, the most recent one, is coaches. Other coaches started showing up. They saw the success I was having. They saw what I was doing. They saw I really sprinted out of the gates and managed to do so well with my business. The first couple times I had coaches show up and ask me, do you coach coaches? I said no. But the third person who asked me within a week and a half, I was like, yes, I do. And in my mind, I'm like, as of 3 seconds ago. But again, it was just, I knew what the bigger goal was, but I was open to how, and allowed, it means I was able to flow with things and really embrace opportunities as they showed up versus being so rigid about what the steps had to be towards it.
So what I'm hearing, the message I'm getting is don't limit yourself. Don't box yourself. Don't limit yourself. Even us as individuals, I see this a lot when I'm coaching career professionals too, is why limit yourself? Why box yourself to what maybe your idea in the beginning was different, maybe your career path was X, but now as you grow, because even when I reflect back on my career, I've grown so much from where I started. But I never, one thing I'm grateful for is I never limited myself. I found a lot of people limit themselves to little stuff. It can be something small, like I don't want to work for a small company. I only want to work for Fortune 500 companies. I tell people, well, I went to go work for Fortune 500 company and I quit and went to work for a smaller company and was probably the best decision when I graduated from university because I was just sitting there sharpening pencils as an HR admin. Like, I didn't go to university to sit here and sharpen your department's pencil. No, this is not for me. Then I went to an organization, not that the organization was a Fortune 500 company, but it wasn't, but the department was small. So it was a manufacturing company. Just me and the manager. And I learned so much. It was a contract job. I didn't care. I lived at home with my parents. I'm Indian. We have a cultural thing. You live with your parents until you get married. So I took full advantage. I'm like, what do I care? Contract, no contract. I didn't care. And I'm grateful for that experience because I didn't limit myself. I looked at the role and I looked at what it's going to do for me, my career, how am I going to grow, my challenges. I find that a lot of times when I'm talking to people, they tend to care too much about little materialistic things, permanent contract, big company. I don't want to work for a small company. I like the fact that you mentioned that, hey, go work at a startup. I find that, not even as an entrepreneur, but as somebody that wants to really grow in their career, I think you should go work for a smaller company or startup because you'll get to do so many different things. You're going to learn so many different things. And also you may discover, like as an entrepreneur, I discovered that I really have a creative mind. I never knew that until I was running my dad's, my dad started this business, printing business. And then I got involved. I'm like, sure, I'll help you and whatever. And then really started like, I'm not a graphic designer, thank God for Canva. But I had a creative eye and I didn't discover this until I was helping my dad with his business. And I was like, oh, I'm really good. Like I have a creative eye, but someone has to be a graphic designer. But I can be the visionary. I can be the designer, but someone's designing it. Thank God for Canva for me because I love designing. But until you don't break that leash, that habit, because I know as career professionals, we're told to find the niche, we're told to find specialists, but I think you should also just let loose and let your creativity flow. You may be good at multiple things. Yeah, I'm an HR expert, but I'm also good at career. I'm also good as an entrepreneur. I'm also good at helping people find their passion. I'm also have a creative eye. I have multiple things that I'm good at. And you know what? It took me a long time to embrace it because everybody keeps telling you, stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. So just find a niche. And I think that's probably one of the, in my opinion anyways, this is my opinion, my personal opinion, I think you shouldn't stay in your lane. Just, we're human beings. We are meant to have multiple talents. Why not embrace the talents you have and go discover new talents?
Yeah,
Rob, what's your opinion on that?
I think it's amazing advice. And I think especially earlier in your career or early in your career, if you don't know where you want to go or what you want to do, or you don't think you found it yet, like just back to my point earlier about taking risks and being open to taking risks. And then same thing, if you're later in your career and you're feeling unsatisfied and unfulfilled and uncertain, then again, try new things you don't know, because your stay in your lane thing is, for me, feels very similar to the idea of just stay within your identity, stay within the frameworks that have been put upon you, that the rules our parents or friends or schools or teachers or whatever put on us. So the best way to find out is by trying new stuff and exposing. So I love hearing you talk about, you worked for Fortune 500 and you were stuck, doing menial jobs that you hated, and then going to a smaller company where, you get to try different stuff. You get exposed to things. It's the learning you can do and the exposure you can get in those scenarios is incredible.
It can also be like, I went for Fortune 500, not that I didn't go to another Fortune 500 company, but not as big, but it was still the structure. It was just, I worked out of a plant. I didn't work out of a head office. I worked out of a facility. So in the facility, it was just HR manager and me. My title was HR assistant, but within 2 to 3 months, I became the right hand to my boss, my manager. So I jumped from an HR assistant to a journalist in HR, if we have to do the whole hierarchy in HR. And eventually, the director of operations said, "You run with recruitment. We trust you. You make the decisions on who gets hired in the plant." I'm an HR assistant, not even 1 year under my belt, right? But again, it's initiatives. My boss always said everything. I gave him credit, but he always said to me, "No, you took the initiative." I'm like, I took the initiative, granted, but you allowed that initiative to happen, because you could have just blocked me and said no, like the other HR assistants. Eventually, we went on this HR learning trip, and that's where I discovered, and I think I created some problems for the other HR assistants with their bosses. My boss used to come to me, ask me everything. I'm like, "Well, we gotta do this, we gotta do this, da, da, da." And they used to be like, "Why is he coming and asking you, and why you know everything and he doesn't?" And I'm like, "I don't know, like this is just how our relationship is." I'm like, "Why, your boss doesn't do?" They're like, "No, our boss doesn't let us do anything." And I was like, "Oh." And then I think when we all went back from that training, it was HR. We're launching this new system. So apparently I created some stir because my boss was great, gave me the opportunity that I wanted, and it was a mat leave contract. I till this day remember that position. Until this day, give credit to that role, to that boss of mine, who I still talk to even 14 years later. Still talk to him, but he made my career. But I also recognized a job that wasn't serving me, that wasn't challenging me. I was not. How can you be challenged by sitting there sharpening pencils? Like admin job, right? So I left. But I think a lot of people don't take risks. You're right. Take risk. A lot of people want stability, comfort, security, but you can't grow if you're just looking for comfort and security. And even as, like, I know both of us are entrepreneurs, but I think it also, you can take the same advice from both of us as entrepreneurs in your career. You gotta take risks if you want to grow. Can't be comfortable 24/7.
You can't. No, the words "get out of your comfort zone" are used so much now that I think people forget what it actually means. And being in your comfort zone is the same things repeatedly, not being challenged, not risking screwing up, not risking failing at something, not pushing against your own fears, insecurities, imposter syndrome, not going out of your area of confidence. But that's where the learning happens. That's where the growth happens. That's where the development happens. That's where all the juicy, great stuff that can lead to wonderful things afterwards.
Okay, so we're gonna take some questions. I know we only have 10 minutes, but here's a good question. Oh, why isn't this working? Oh, there we go. So what does Growth Habit do? So what does your company do?
My company supports entrepreneurs and coaches and helps them get crystal clear on what they want to be doing, what their goals are, what their values are, what their purpose is. 2, helps them build unshakable confidence and belief that not only can they do it, but they deserve it. Because if you don't believe you can do it and deserve it, then the third piece, teaching tools, strategies, and tactics, it doesn't matter. I can teach you all the tools, strategies, tactics in the world, how to figure out who your niche is and how to find clients online and how to do sales call. Like, all that stuff doesn't matter if you don't have that confidence and belief that you can do it. So those are the 3 buckets that I operate under. I've got a course, like a set course. I have a 12-week course for the new coaches that I work with, or coaches that are looking to grow their business. And I'm about imminently to launch a new 6-week course for entrepreneurs where I'm going to offer some group coaching for entrepreneurs that are looking to get in the right state of mind, to get the mindset and get the confidence and focus they need to really succeed at launching a business.
Great. Next question. How do you feel about college versus university?
And I understand this question that is meaning that college is more hands-on things. It's more trades. It's more generally more like practically applied stuff. Was that how you interpret the question, Gurpreet? Is that how you understand the difference?
No, I think I'm seeing it as how do you feel about college? Okay, so I've had this conversation with multiple HR people, especially especially as a consultant, where companies say must be university grad, and I say why? Why? What's the difference, right? I've had one client that tell me, well, here's the difference that we've noticed. It's all about, and I've noticed it too, as well. I noticed it back a few years ago when I had interns at my dad's business that I was managing. I did see, actually, I shouldn't say this because I also had a college student that was excellent. I think too many people put emphasis on college versus university versus looking at the talent itself. A lot of people think that if you graduated from university, you're going to be more critical thinker, you're going to think outside the box. But if you're in college, you're just limited to that thinking within the box, not outside. I don't know. A lot of people have this misconception. You as an HR professional as well, like you've worked in, did you notice a difference between college and university, or to you talent was talent?
Talent is talent. For me, it's based more on experience and ability. I think that's more important. So then I would just reframe the question, or when you're approaching this question, is what are you looking to get out of it? What are you looking to learn? And to just quantify that against the idea that university is very expensive. So if you're looking to go on a path and work in academia or work in research in some of these places, then I don't see how you cannot have university as part of your path. But for some other roles, can you get that learning and experience somewhere else? And then same thing for college. It is, well, I don't know about in the box or outside the box, but I know that you can learn some really practical things. If you want to become an electrician, if you want to, there's some trades that college is incredible for that.
Yeah.
Especially I think the idea, what scares me, if someone has no idea what they want to be doing and they're not sure yet and they've had any experiences yet, to go sign up for a really expensive tuition at a university if you don't know, that seems a little scary to me. But it's
It's
really
sad,
choice of their own.
but it's sad because even a lot right now, a lot of students are spending so much money getting education, but then they can't get jobs because no one wants to hire them without experience. Um, I'm gonna quote Gary Vaynerchuk said it the best. College, education is broken. Education doesn't get you ready for anything. And I'm gonna go back to this because now that when I'm reflecting back on, I'm not gonna say that I regret getting a university degree at all. At all. My program was amazing. It was a business program with IT, so it always gave me a leverage in the HR space. So I don't come from a traditional HR background. I have a degree in IT and did a certificate/minor in HR. My plan B became my career. But my IT skills, the education I got, the program was new, so it made you think outside of the box, become analytical person, be leveraging IT in the business world. But that's about it. I can't say really. I would say, you know what? I would say today's day and age, I don't think, and I have interns right now working for me, and I can say this very confidently just because I have interns working for me. I feel sorry for kids right now in schools because education is really not preparing you for the real world, because by the time you get the education, things have changed. We live in a very fast-paced, changing environment. I have interns right now. The things they're learning under me as an HR professional, working for my consulting company, they are not learning that in school at all. And I'm like, hey, did your school cover this? No. I'm like, did they cover this? No, I'm like, what did this school cover? And these students come from like well-recognized universities. So, and that's why I will make this. I can make this assessment just based on HR interns. That yeah, school actually even on my social media stuff, schools are not really equipped. I think these days to help people really students. I think right now, and Tony Robinson said this too. Right now, the best place to learn is from one another, like individuals that are successful in their field and they're teaching. There's tons, like I've learned from other entrepreneurs so much. I've taken courses from other entrepreneurs, and I think I've developed myself by learning from those successful people that I want to be like them one day. I've learned more from those individuals than I've ever learned from any course, any school. Uh, I can 100% attest to that, that I've learned more even today. I've till this day learned more from other entrepreneurs than I have in other HR professionals than I have in school. So I've actually stopped taking any school courses. What's your take on that?
I think we've kicked this around enough. I think,
I
yeah.
know.
Well, I was already harping pretty bad on the education system earlier, as far as that it's set up in, in grade school, it's setting you up to be a factory worker, and then what's being taught at the post-secondary level is often behind. It's what's what in the book that the professor is selling. Like, it's so, and things are moving so quickly and changing so fast. So I don't doubt that the interns you have right now, the learning they're getting from working with you is going to be far more important than what they are getting through school. Like, there's a massive gap there as far as, so what does that actually mean? Like, how do you negotiate? How do you handle email? How do you learn? How do you actually learn? How do you, like, there's some really important things that aren't actually taught versus this is what's taught. This is what's in the curriculum. You're going to get to say you went to this prestigious university. You're going to have all this debt, but this is not necessarily going to mean you're going to find a job.
No, sadly, the answer is no right now. Like tons of people going out getting education, spending all this money, and it's not cheap. Getting a university degree is not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't cheap when I got it, but definitely not cheap now. It wasn't cheap, but thank God for my daddy. Uh, but yeah, people are taking loans, and it's so expensive. But then, what are you left with? I had this conversation with somebody a few months ago, and he was complaining about this too because one of his cousins or somebody, and I'm like, you gotta evaluate things and make a decision. But sadly, a lot of people do run after titles. Yeah, you gotta make a decision for yourself and pick the best part for you. I would say if you're gonna go deciding between college and your university, the best advice I can give based on my personal experience, I did a lot of my education during night classes, not, because the night classes professors actually worked in the field, and then they came at night and taught. So I strategically, me and my sister, I have a twin sister, both of us did the same program. So strategically, both of us took a lot of our core classes during night because those professors were working in the field.
Beautiful.
So
Oh, what a difference.
we took all our core classes in night because those professors were teaching. I mean, sorry, they were working in the field. So the way we learned, their learning style was different, and we compared. We're like, who's gonna go during the day and learn from professors who like never worked in the field, but they're teaching. So we strategically did this, and I think this is one advice I can give students because we did it. It's the best advice. Something that me and my sister both did was strategically take night classes and learn from professors who were actually teaching during the working during the day in the field that they came to teach at night.
That's a great hack. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was a hack until now. I'm telling this everybody. It's all about entrepreneurship with mentorship in 21st century. So do you agree with this? Do you think it's all about entrepreneurship and mentorships?
Yeah, I plugged the mentorship thing earlier. We talked about it. That's something I really believe in the entrepreneurship approach. The things you can learn, the vast exposure, the amount of things you can like just get to try. I think that is a recipe. Because like back to the last question, if we were talking 30 years ago, 40 years ago, then university was a great investment. It was a lot cheaper, and it was
Yeah.
almost a guarantee that you got a high paying job. That the price of the ticket to admission for university is skyrocketed, and there's no guarantee for the work on the other side. So this idea of being an entrepreneur and finding mentorship, I think, is a magic combination for the 21st century.
Okay, so that was the last question. Your ending remarks.
My ending remarks. We went through a bunch of the advice that I was thinking that I want to talk about. See if there's anything else that we haven't kind of covered. I think the last thing I want to talk about then is entrepreneurship, taking risks, being willing to fail, getting in a comfort zone. There's a theme around it. We've talked about a bunch of these things, and they all kind of go together. And it comes with fear. It comes with being afraid. It comes with being maybe seen as an imposter. It comes with, potentially screwing up and having some egg on your face. I encourage people to shine a bright light on their fears. So if you feel hesitant about doing something, if you feel scared about doing something, pause, ask yourself why. Ask yourself, what's the worst case scenario that can happen here? Ask yourself, if this does happen, well, one, how likely is it that's going to happen? And then two, if that did happen, what could I do to start getting back on the right path? And normally when you start asking these kind of tough questions about the stuff that scares you and your fears, you realize it's not that scary. The boogeyman is a lot more powerful in the shadows and in the dark. But once you put a bright light and start poking holes and asking, like, really, what could really happen? What are the chances of this happening? What could I do if this happened? It kind of takes all the power away and out of the fear. And it's an important exercise and something that I do regularly if I'm hesitating about doing something. And it allows me to push through it because it's not that scary versus otherwise it's just this lingering fear that you're ignoring and you're pretending is not there.
That's actually a great advice. I do the opposite. Instead of fear, I look at my weakness.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like, I guess kind of similar, but I started doing this, but it did start from fear actually. I had a bad experience, which maybe I deserve, but I don't think I deserve. But maybe now that I'm reflecting, I used to like staying behind the scenes. So I started this nonprofit association with this individual. Long story short, I like staying behind the scenes. So when our nonprofit association kind of took off, this individual was in the front of the scenes, got all the credit, and also took the credit. Didn't mind taking it and not saying, "Well, I have a partner. It was her idea. She da 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 da." Nothing like that. So, anyways, I learned from that experience was, so basically I never got recognition for this association. That right now it's doing really well. We started it back in 2013, 14. Long story short, it's still that associate's successful, but I eventually parted ways because I never got recognition. I did a lot of the hard lifting. But one thing that came out of that situation was I learned, I'm like, I can't always stay behind the scenes. Why do I want to be behind the scenes? Because I was scared to be in front. I don't want to speak in public. I was just like living in this like, comfort zone, right? It was a little bit uncomfortable. And then I recognized, like, I can't live like that. I can't be successful in my career if I'm just going to stay behind the scenes. And if I want to go into entrepreneurs as an entrepreneur, I can't be behind the scenes. I'm going to have to brand myself. I have to put myself out there. So that incident really made me realize fear, weakness, and really put a plan together on how to overcome it. And I started to overcome it. I started taking small actions, started speaking more in public, doing public events, so on. And that started in 2014. Till this day, I do the same habit. I always recognize one thing that I'm scared of doing or have a weakness in doing or it's making me uncomfortable, that I put an action plan on how to overcome it.
Awesome. That's a great story. Yeah, that's good. That's a tough lesson learned, but that you've adjusted from it.
Yeah, when you each experience you learn something, right? Like bad or good, you learn. The bad ones really, you learn really a lot more, and you really grow from it. But I don't want to take up more of your time, and we already gone 5 minutes over. But great tips, great advice. I really enjoyed learning about you. We've been connected, but never really personally talked until today. And it was really interesting to hear your, like, you started as a DJ, and then you went into HR, and then now you're having your own successful business. So it's a pleasure talking to you, a pleasure getting to know you. Great advice and great tips. And I hope everybody that's listening in has also enjoyed listening to Rob and taking advice from him. If somebody needs to reach out to you, Rob, how's the best way to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn. Just message me on LinkedIn is a really great way. You can go to my website, but I'm on LinkedIn every day. This is being broadcast on LinkedIn, so I can think of no better way. Just DM me on LinkedIn. That would be the best way. Thank you, and I appreciate everything you just said. It's been great to be on your show. It's really nice to get to know you too, because it's the same thing. We've been connected for a while. We have all these friends in common. We see each other's content, but
I think that's how we connected.
Yes. So no, thank you. I appreciate being on the show.
You know what? Now your comments on some of our posts when we're like advertising that we're gonna talk about this topic. Now it makes sense that where you're coming from. I didn't really, you know what? I never scrolled down in entire profile until today for prep. And I was like, oh, he's in HR. I'm like, now when I'm talking, it's like David Javu. Like, no wonder where your comments were coming from.
So what Gurpreet's saying is,
Gail never said you had an HR background. So funny.
That's really funny. Well, what Gurpreet's alluding to is her other show that she does with Gail all the time. It was a few weeks ago, and there was the topic, and there was a teaser, and I answered like this, and I gave a really detailed answer because I'm passionate about the topic. And then their comments afterwards were like, "Well, you kind of said everything we're going to talk about on the show," and I felt bad. So I'm keeping my comments a lot more brief now. What's that?
I think it was recruitment bias. I think it was the topic about recruitment biases, or was it AI and intelligence? Something. And you were like, "You wrote this long thing," and I was reading it, and then Gail wrote a comment like, "Oh, I was thinking the same thing." It's like, we're actually talking about this. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Where all that stuff. I was like, wow. You know what? I'm being honest. I didn't really fully read your entire LinkedIn profile until today. And at that time when I was reading, I'm like, wow, this guy's a really good entrepreneur. He knows his stuff in HR space too. Like, I'm like, oh, good for him. I was like really impressed. And now when I had to do homework on you to prep for the show, I'm like, oh, it makes so much sense now where those comments were coming from.
It all comes together.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That means you're the second person I interviewed that ended up being HR. It's like, okay, you should also be on mine and Gil's show one day when we're talking about HR stuff. Definitely gonna tell Gil. Probably has some great insights to add on to our G&G LinkedIn Live segment. But definitely we'll have you. Thank you so much taking the time out to speak to me, everybody that's listening in. I hope everybody gets added value. Thank you so much, Rob. Everybody have a good night, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.